Félicitations, Marcia, et au nom de la trentaine d'organismes qui se parrainent cet sommet, on vous remercie pour votre courage, pour cet discours.
In the name of 30 human rights organizations here, we would like to thank you for your speech. We congratulate you for your fight against the gender apartheid in the terrorist regime in
and for your clarion calls to action for us all, on behalf of the brave women on the front lines of the struggle against one of the most brutal forms of oppression in the world today, the gender apartheid being imposed on the women of Afghanistan and Iran by those terrorist regimes. Thank you for giving them voice and for being with us here today. The very least that our countries can do is to not shake the blood-soaked hands of their oppressors. This week and next week, right next door, in the halls of the Palais des Nations, the architects of repression of Iran will be taking to the podium. The atrocities that Marcia and Masih Alinejad described are an indictment not only of those criminals taking to the podium, but of all the nations in the free world not holding them to account. It should be the names of the victims you heard described today echoing in the halls of the United Nations, not the voices of their oppressors. The courageous women of Iran and Afghanistan are fighting not only for their freedom, but on behalf of us all. Indeed, the mass domestic repression of these terrorist regimes, if left unchecked, metastasizes from domestic repression into external aggression, into transnational repression, as you heard about from speakers earlier today. And this has hit close to home in Canada as well, and in many free nations. If he was with us in person, my mentor, Professor Kotler, the former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and one of the first speakers here at the Geneva Summit 18 years ago, he used to come and speak here every year. He cannot be with us in person here today because he is subject to a transnational repression plot by the Islamic Republic of Iran, threatened by assassination simply for speaking out for human rights. So the struggles that the brave women of Iran and Afghanistan are leading on the ground, if we do not support them, those same terrorist regimes will come to attack us here wherever we live. And we know exactly who are behind these attacks. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps were behind the targeting of Masih. They were behind the targeting of Professor Kotler. And they are the ones brutalizing the people of Iran in the streets today. They should be designated as a terrorist organization and their affiliates on our soil prosecuted. Canada, the US, the European Union have designated them as terrorist organization. The United Kingdom and other free states should be encouraged to do so as well. So don't just walk out of the Islamic Republic's speeches at the Palais des Nations this week and next. That would be a good first step. Sanction them, designate them as terrorist regime. They should not be allowed, those individual architects of repression, to enjoy the freedoms abroad that they crush of Iranian citizens at home. The Supreme Leader Khamenei and his criminals visiting here in Geneva, including Abbas Araghchi, Qasem Garibabadi, Afsaneh Nadipur, should be subject to Magnitsky-style targeted sanctions for their human rights violations and blocked from ever stepping foot anywhere else. This should be their last trip to any democratic nation. It is a shame that they are in Switzerland. They should never step foot in any free society again. They cannot use our banks, our businesses, and our beaches while butchering the Iranian people, and they should be subject to targeted Magnitsky sanctions. But this discussion about Iran, about Afghanistan, is a microcosm of all the cases we heard discussed on the stage today. We are witnessing a global authoritarian culture of corruption and criminality underpinned by impunity, where the dictators of the world are meeting next door, while the international community far too often stands silent in the face of their atrocities. Each and every one of our brave summit speakers here today came with a message, giving words to the unspeakable and finding the courage to share what is happening in their homelands and in their hearts, a cri de coeur for action. And so we must call on our governments to raise all the cases you heard about today, publicly, prominently, persistently, at every opportunity, whether at the UN or beyond it. And even at the UN, our democratic nations are often given the opportunity to talk about these cases, talk about these atrocities, to raise the plight and pain of political prisoners and their families fighting for their freedom, but choose not to do so. So whether in the Human Rights Council, in resolutions, in statements, at the Universal Periodic Review, or bilaterally with the states that are often causing these harms that they meet with anyhow, they should be raising the cases of these political prisoners and demanding their immediate and unconditional release. Again, these free nations are far too silent when they have the opportunity to do so. The very least they can do is be raising the names of these dissidents and these victims to these regimes and demanding their freedom. But taking action for human rights is not only for governments to do, it is not only about laws, but about lives. And not just about how we litigate, but about how we live. Each of us here today can do our part in our own way, whether that is speaking to our elected officials, writing for our local newspapers, or posting on social media. Many of the released political prisoners who've taken to this stage after finding freedom year after year at the Geneva summit often talk about how this solidarity from around the world, something that might be as seemingly small or ordinary as the act of sending them a letter when they were in prison, actually had an extraordinary effect. Because writing that letter, or writing about them in a paper, or posting about them on social media, simply mentioning their name on a stage, tells them when they're in prison that they're not forgotten, that they're not alone. And it also tells the perpetrators and those oppressing them that they are being watched and that their crimes are not being forgotten, that the world cares, and that we will not relent until they are free. And while that day may seem too distant, and while it is otherwise easy to succumb to cynicism and despair after hearing all of the atrocities described today and the government inaction that underpins these crimes, I conclude this conference with hope. Because when I look into the audience and I see the heroes who spoke today and all the members of civil society who have come together to support them, I see living, fighting proof that freedom prevails in every part of the world. We saw Leopoldo Lopez, who emerged from the torture of Ramo Verde prison in Venezuela to found the World Liberty Congress. Aram Akil, who survived ISIS captivity to become a leading voice for the Kurdish people. Kim Yumi, who escaped North Korea, perhaps the most repressive totalitarian state, to give voice to those still suffering there. And we heard from Blessing Malanga, who resisted persecution in Zimbabwe and prosecution for his journalism, to take the stage and speak the truth and commit to continue to fight for media freedom. So we see that across every continent, each and every person who spoke today personally embodies that hope for the future and for freedom. And because of them, I believe that with your help, a future Geneva summit will likewise see the political prisoners highlighted today, like Pastor Ezra Jin, like those in Russia, highlighted by Marina, and all those who spoke of the prisoners in Venezuela, Vietnam, Cuba, Iran, Belarus, Hong Kong, that eventually they will be here to take the stage in Freedom and Geneva Summit. And in Pakistan as well, in the imprisonment of Imran Khan, and all those being persecuted by regimes engaging in oppression around the world, that we will see them in solidarity here on stage. Because as Martin Luther King Jr. used to say, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I would add that it is because of the brave, noble, and inspiring individuals who spoke earlier today, those dissidents on the front lines of the struggle for our collective shared values and the future of humanity, it is because of them that this moral arc continues to bend. So may all the painful testimonies we heard today may not only be an act of remembrance, but a remembrance that, like these brave heroes, we must always act. Thank you.